as you guys can see, we have the scene over here, which is the coin and 4 pebbles. Now, what we want to do is, many tutorials will say, like, just make this, but one of the most important things is on default, it is on meters. I change mine always to millimeters here. If you go to the scene and the units to millimeters, because anything that you make, you want to make it at scale. You can make it very big, but for your final render, you want it at scale. Because why? Because you want to have the camera to be as accurate as possible. Now, because it's smaller, the depth of field is also smaller, as you can see. This is a very cool feature. You just go here to the right side, up here, and down your depth of field. You don't have to go and render the whole thing every time. It's amazing. So you can see the depth of field is very shallow, because small things, micro, macro photography, all that kind of stuff, product photography, like for very teeny tiny stuff, even an insect, the depth of field is very shallow. If we use our references, I haven't used any references for this, so where's your reference, Timo? Where's your reference? Now, if we go for like and photo macro photography, I can't see where I'm typing. There we go. All right. So this is to show something at least, but you'll see the depth of field is like very shallow, like super shallow, as you can see. Okay, that's scary. Okay, let's choose something else. I did not realize ants will be that scary looking from up close, if it's an ant. Now, okay. So if you have a look here, I'm just gonna make myself so I can make hand gestures for you guys to see. Now, depth of field, and materials is very important as well. But let me start here. We have our main subject, or our focal point subject. The focus will be on the subject, and the awesome thing about that is you only pay attention with detail on the subject, or wherever the focus is going to be. Focus is here. You can see these rocks, it's like doesn't have high detail. I bet you can't even see in the render how it really looks like, because if we take this photo, where exports, for example, this, like, you don't see anything with the photos. This is also with compositing included, but that's for the next video. But I'll quickly skim through so you guys can get like an idea, because the type of lenses that you use are important as well. So if you can get in camera, or actually if you can get in camera effects, amazing. But you don't even see the nooks and crannies of these rocks. So I can actually have used an even lower poly version of the rocks, and that will bring rendering times way more down, because we're only focusing on this thing. You can't see that much. Wait. Okay. I can render this one so long, but you'll see, boom, 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 working very hard. And the thing is, we want to focus on materials as well, but the rest of the scene, you don't really have to focus that hard on materials, because we don't see the detail. That's the amazing thing of using small objects. But Timo, what if you want to use a big scene that you can see? Well, you don't have to use the fine detail anyways, because you're all zoomed out. So only the most crucial things that you should be able to see, you should see. Because usually when we look, you'll get a gut feeling when you see something and you're trying to go for photorealism, and you don't, and something feels a bit off. That means something is off, because our brain picks up stuff. We see it every day. Every day is real. We see it, but we don't always notice deliberately what it is. So with practicing these skills actually teaches you how to just remember all the key points, or see, okay, what's off, what's on. Anyways, now, because the coin is our focal subject, we are using, even if it's just a real object, the term of photorealism is, or realism or photorealistic renders is making the mind believe that is real, even though it's not, because we're using concepts to make it look real, tricking the brain thinking it is real, but it's not, because we have a floating coin here, and a coin made of marble. It looks real because you can see here is with the compositing, we have the lens effect of the little bit of distortion going around with the colors. So that sells it even more because we don't have a perfect render, and I've added grain intention, like you can see here's all the grain. I did that deliberately because we always have noise when we take videos and stuff. So that's the awesome thing. Oh, ooh, okay. I zoomed in, but actually never. There we go. All right. If I zoom in, you'll see a lot of pixels, pixelations, but you see up here we have like a little bit of a distortion effect happening there. Now, the reason for that is because of the compositing, but if you look through a lens, certain lenses, you'll get that effect. These are very outdated lenses. Let's have a look. If you look in here, you might see a little bit of a distortion effect. Okay. I think it's this one, or is it this one? I can't, oh, that's why I can't see anything. Now, to style it even more, which I have not done in this render, which I should actually, is this. For the camera settings, cool thing is I actually hacked the system. Panoramic, set to field of view 360. And now if we go to render view, render, it will actually show a little bit of a wider aspect like this, which is not fantastic. So we're going to change the lens because it's now wide lens. So the lens we go to 50 because it was earlier 50. Now the difference here is I'm going to go here for rendering slot 5, so we change it to slot 4, render. Okay, you'll see there will be a slight difference because I'm hacking the panoramic, because wide lenses as well creates, instead of like straight lines, it creates like almost like a curved line, which is really cool. Now for material wise, we're focusing to be as realistic as possible on our subject that we're focusing on. Other stuff, it can be really plain, you don't have to focus on the detail because it's blurred out. Again, amazing thing of the macro world. And the depth of field just sells it much more because we're actually trying to mimic the real life scenarios. That's why we're tricking the brain and using bevels on our subject or whatever we're focusing on, whatever will be catching the light, because lighting is important as well. And with the bevels, it creates highlights. It's actually taking longer to render this time. So it takes, so the bevels creates highlights for our subject. So it's making it even look more sexy in the lighting, because if you just have sharp edges, nothing in the real world has sharp edges. Even though your on the coin is literally deliberately sharp edges, otherwise it would take forever to render. But for the coin itself, there is bevel edges, even though it's not a real coin, but it gives the illusion that it's real. Now, if we go here and to 5, you see it's a little bit different here around the corners. So slot 5 is the normal perspective, and here we have panoramic. So I squeeze it a little bit more in, but this little effect is very tiny, but it does make a difference. But that's up to your artistic choice. If we go back here to our layout, for lighting I use gobos because the gobos sell a lot more. Now I'm going to go out here and go to render, because the gobos is like plants, anything that's in the way, and the way to make it, to increase the render times or decrease the render times. Increasing means longer times. To decrease it, I use gobos, because then you don't have to actually model the plant and put that in front and animate it. You can find it on Blender Market, link in the description. And I use volumetrics as well to add a little bit of the lighting, because without it, it looks way too clear. Because where on earth do you find like perfect clear air quality in a forest? Okay, I can think of one, but there's always a little bit of particles in the air obscuring the light. It looks pretty like this as well. You can see where the volumetric starts and ends. Now, this will create the forest look, and using a plain light is not worth it because it's just gonna look very plain. This is how it will look like if it's just plain light. Okay, it's overexposed now, so we go for divide by 2. Boom. Never mind. But you can see it looks so boring. It looks very boring. Now you know we have our gobos that creates a massive difference in the lighting. I actually put here underneath because if we go to rendering, you will see here in slot 5. Here is a little bit of a light. Now with the animation, I've added a little bit of water sound, so it creates the illusion that it's in a forest above water flowing, because we're painting a picture with sound as well. That's why sound design is important with these type of renders. If it's moving, or actually just with stills, having a sound with it also helps create a picture of the story. But not everyone pays attention or wants to do that. Not everyone has audio on their phones or whatever device they're looking at with. Now, yeah, that's basically, then we have the movements, that is the animation. You want to make it seem natural, because if you use very static, then it's gonna look very weird. Because if we use your control point animate, okay, if we just going to create this to linear, for instance, and just, you can see it's like, it looks, you can tell there's something off from it. But if we use a bit more of a speed ramping curves, it seems much more natural. It seems like it's actually floating. It's an interesting, you'll feel it, because if you see people walking in animations, you can tell them they don't walk normal because they're hand animated. Unless if it's stylized, because then with that you can get away with stylization, you get away with quite a lot. But with photorealistic renders, you want to trick the brain to thinking this thing is real, even though it's completely fake. Using real photos for materials also works because it's from real life, so it's photos in a photorealistic, it's like in the name. So yeah, this is basically it. It's basically that.